Hello, this is my third eye pineal gland testimony. Um, Prior to my third eye opening, I was quote unquote gang stalked or going through some spiritual warfare. So many things was happening to me in LA in regards to I will discuss on my later videos. But yeah, so one night came back from church and just a sermon about the prodigal son and go back and go to sleep and when I close my eyes, I would see something spinning, and it would change colors and purple to yellow, different colors, and all that stuff. So the night I went to sleep, and I was actually guided into a light. And when it happened, I could actually see something like a figure that was standing next to the light, guiding me in. And at that time it happened, I was kind of like trying to figure out what was going on. I was still smoking cigarettes and still smoking weed. I was going online reading about how marijuana helps the pineal gland, but those things were in place for, which is full of deception. I can honestly say that because of the things that has happened in my life, due to me using drugs and marijuana and so many other things. But um, when it happened, there's a lot of spiritual warfare going on for a couple of years, and still to this day, I deal with spiritual warfare. Um, the gang stalking terminology and perception and all that stuff, and dealing with the reap what you're sowing aspect of my reality has tremendously improved compared to the more traumatic moments that I experienced during my spiritual warfare. Um, my spiritual warfare moments were at its most excessive when all those the Black Lives movements and all these things were happening. Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Ferguson and all these things started to happen in my life that were coinciding with these things. So it was like um, so many things I can discuss in regards to what took place. For example, I remember I was going through so much spiritual warfare. It was so deep in regards to the perception, dimensions, and things that was happening around me. At this point in time, it's 2015. I would say I came back to Louisiana, and I remember like so much stuff would happen. Like I was dealing with some heavy mind control in regards to numbers, and everywhere I go, cars pull up. I look at my clock; it'll be 11:11 or 111 or 222 or 444. One of the most frightening things that happened to me where I could see things in my room like dark spirits. And at this time, I was still like sinning. I was still fornicating. It was part of my process of really maturing and becoming what God has called me to be and to tell my story. But I remember one particular day, one particular night, early in the morning, I was asleep and I was awakened at exactly 4:44 a.m. and something was hitting me when it woke me up. It was a spirit. Um, I have had an incident where I was dealing with pornography, where porn was a thing for me, like porn and sex and women, and coming from that perspective of life to in which you're spiritually awakened to the world around you and your mind and the things that you can place in your mind, it was a definitely hard to let go. Even to this day, I blame myself just based on things I went through. Why did it take me so long for me to catch on what was happening and what was going on? So I remember one day, like I got my phone out. I went straight to Pornhub, and I decided like I want to watch some porn. Like, and I remember I clicked on the video, and the video said exactly heaven or hell. Um, I've had so many spiritual experiences, which happens every day in regards to synchronicities, in regards to um, I would more so take away the synchronicity aspect of my life. It'd be more like miracles in regards to my gift. Um, of course, I do a lot of praying, and I still get attacked by people around me, by things that I can tell people are really not in control, or spirits are controlling people to send me a message, or quote unquote, like all eyes are on me. And the story in which I will reveal to the world one day, it revolves around things in my life and signs and things in which was happening since I was a kid and all played out. Um, and I would notice weird things that was happening throughout my journey in life from LA to Seattle to Las Vegas and even in Louisiana. But um, more so now, since me being awakened in my third eye or having God and Holy Spirit direct me in my path, it has been more so of me can show people things around me more so. It's like the power of showing people God is real or being a messenger of God. But but also there's a part also to it in which God allows negative things to happen to make you seek him even more. And but that's the aspect of reality in which that I'm working on right now, in the aspect of seeking God more and being able to be comfortable with myself and who I am in the past life that I have left behind. Um so this is briefly just a brief story about my experiences, things that I've seen. Um I can like go on and on about the things that I've seen and experienced in my life. I remember I dreamed of 9/11 before it happened. I literally dreamed of 9/11 before it happened. And I went around actually telling people, like, in regards to the only thing people have to do to really um, attack the U.S. I specifically remember telling people this like a month before it happened. It would be something I would talk about just amongst people I come in contact with and try to explain to them about the vulnerabilities of this country. And when it happened, it shocked me because it was no coincidence. And at that moment, I remember when it happened, I was kind of mind boggled as to how did this happen. I never considered myself a prophet or never really like got understanding about revelation and all that stuff. But that in itself meant something to me in my life and kind of like triggered me to look and search for God or where was I at. I wasn't raised in the church, and don't get me wrong, I believed in God and believed the Bible, and I would do things as a child that was symbolical uh, um to my belief system, understanding about the end time. Um, I remember I would go outside and check the fig tree to see if it was producing fruit within a certain amount of time. And if it didn't produce fruit, it would be cast down and thrown into the fire. But I didn't understand the element in which Jesus was conveying. I will literally go outside and actually check this fig tree to see was it actually producing fruit. But that was based on my limited understanding because my household wasn't a Christian based household or religious or anything that dealt with God was completely shunned upon or not talked about. But throughout my life, I've seen signs and miracles and things in my life to let me know that I'm not alone. And this is a good feeling. At times, it can be unnerving because you're, constantly questioning your life and the things you've done and if God is with you. But in my life, I know God is with me. But also, carnally, that carnal mind pulls you back into that reality of just God or the demons deceiving me or just witchcraft. So I've realized that it's a walk within the journey within myself and the things that I've experienced to really humble myself and seek God and not allow man to really tell me what's wrong or with me or what happened to me. But definitely something supernatural and spiritually has happened to me beyond which I can't explain. But there's like so many things in regards to major events in the news that has happened that are related to my life and things that I feel like are part of my story, part of my journey, part of my testimony to reveal that God is really real and that He's not uh, um, just some mythological thing that's been made up. Um, so the gift also comes like you feel like sometimes you're cursed because of the things you have to deal with in which you feel like you're alone. But I feel like it's part of that fiery trial, that furnace that makes you want to withstand the pain and know that you are strong and you are something that God molded is molding. It's part of that I hate to use this term, forgive me for using this term, but it's part of that process of going through the fire as silver and coming out as gold. I'm not into that alchemy and that figuratively speaking or trying to compare it spiritually and all that stuff. I'm just speaking in the aspect of things that has played in my life. Um, but not to get off subject about the alchemy aspect of it, but that part is a big part of my story also, the alchemy and how it came about in my life and how um just so many weird things was happening in regards to I would hear people talking about alchemy. I walked down the street and when I started getting gang stalked and just stuff started to happen to me in LA, um, I have so many stories in regards to my gang stalking target in LA where I would probably have to break it down individually and to really convey the things in which I've been through and experienced in my life in regards to what's happening or has happened to me. Um, but yeah, so I went through a lot of stuff in the last couple of years, and it kind of like pushed me away from like trusting anyone because I felt like that was what God wanted me to do in regards to not seek answers in other people by watching videos or trying to be friends or whatever. But I still hinder in that aspect because of of the fear in which uh, comes with being alone, like you're by yourself. But like I said, I'm not really by myself. I know this for a fact, and um, but yeah, when I close my eyes, like I see something spinning in my. Um, of course, I have things that like everything means something to me. I can go somewhere, it could be signs, it could be all type of aspects of things that in my mind I know that is like a message for me. But actually I read the Bible, it like speaks to me. Like it's kinda like I could be going through something and I open the Bible up, it's directly talking about what I'm experiencing. Um for example, at this time I was still like I was in my fear mode in LA where I was trying to like figuring out what's going on. I was getting attacked each and every way possibly by the people around me. So it was like I was like at a point where I wanted to give up. Like, man, I'm smoking cigarettes and everywhere I look around, there's people dying, there's death, and it's like things was coming after me happens interdimensionally or hyperdimensionally, whatever term you want to use. Um, but yeah, like so. But after a year and a half of that and all that stuff, but stuff, miracles start to take place in regards to for example, I moved into a 1,000 unit apartment complex, and at that time, I was going through so much spiritual warfare, up and down. But I was still smoking weed. I was trying to battle smoking weed, and that was one of the hardest things I couldn't do was stop smoking marijuana and cigarettes. So, but I moved into a 1,000 unit apartment complex, and I moved exactly into room 316. Now, what are the odds of that? So, um, I just wanted to like give a brief story about my experiences, things I've seen. I can start like go. I can go back to moments where how I was being things was being led up to my reality in regards to being a targeted individual, and I've never heard this term up until 2015, where I started notice a pattern of vehicles following me around, and I came online. I went online to look and found out it was called so-called targeted individuals. And at the time, I was still smoking weed. I was just living a sinful life, and I thought it was a neighborhood watch group. And it was like, okay, I took away the fear knowing that it was a neighborhood watch group. But one day, I started just looking at this. It's like within like a couple weeks or a month, I just started looking at these individuals around me, and they were kind of like act out what was on my mind in some aspect. And it was like it was being reflected. So um, it was no way possible these people could be so synchronized and this efficient in displaying this type of illusion without it being something supernatural behind it. It had to be a supernatural element behind the way these individuals were reflecting in my life and things. But at the same time, I was going between carnal and spiritual, and things being layered inside my mind. I come to think about supernaturally in regards to right before it happened. I remember it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm downtown LA, and I remember I happened to look up in the sky. You know, I should have been home at the time. I lived in off Crenshaw, and I remember I was just downtown LA just hanging out. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Hundreds of people out, walking around, and all this stuff. And Skid Row's not the one of the nicest places in LA. First of all, I just happened to look up, and I see a helicopter up there, like a military grade helicopter up there, just like hovering, and that kind of like struck me kind of strange. And I don't know if that was actually a military or a supernatural. Well, I don't know if it was an actual military involvement at this point, or was it one of those moments where the supernatural illusions were layering this belief system in my mind. So when it came to happen, I would thought it was actually the CIA or some type of government officials really following me around. But that would soon change my belief when I can give you like thousands of stories that happened over this short period of time. But um, the most signifying thing that let me know that this was not supernatural when I went into a fear or panic mode where I couldn't take it no more almost, where everywhere I looked was cars, it was sirens, my thoughts were not in control. It was I started to see pyramids everywhere I go. I never like I've been around LA. I never took notice of all these pyramids, and I was into that Illuminati belief system or that paradigm belief of what was really happening. And I remember one situation where I was kind of like freaking out. I went into a library. I grabbed 7 books. You know, I know seven was like a number of God and completion and all this stuff. So I went to the library, and anyone familiar with downtown LA, they have one of the largest libraries west of the Mississippi. And I went to this library, and I went to a random floor. It's like 7 levels upstairs and downstairs, and it's below street level. I went to this library. I grabbed 7 books. I was freaking out. I was panicking. I was like, God, what's going on? I couldn't understand it. I know I wasn't crazy. I wasn't going to let anyone call me crazy or mentally ill. But so even throughout the drug use, I know it was something that in reality I was perceiving, my perception, or it was only limited to the things in which I had knew in my life at that point. And a lot of it came through researching and government. I was going back and forth in the government mind. But this moment right here let me know that it was something supernatural and beyond what I knew about life working around me. And I remember I grabbed 7 books. I turned 6 of them face down, right? And the seventh one I turned up. And this is what it said. It said, The Journey Back from Hell. I could not believe that. I must have like stormed out of that library and really tried to I really went to the security desk and asked them could they record the footage and give it to me, because that in itself was mind blowing. And I remember the security guard looked at me. He was like, "Oh, this happens to everybody." But the way he said it kind of like signified there was God or something taking over that security guard to really convey a limited message to what I was going through and my understanding what I was going through as I reflect back on it, because I thought that it was something going on in the world in which I was left behind and didn't really realize what was happening. I thought everybody knew about this stuff, and I was just left behind and just figuring it out. But at the time, the tax came a little bit more severe because I was like smoking weed. I was, I was in LA getting eighths of $30, and my connection had a guy that I knew like would give me like $500 for weed at a time. And I remember one day I came back from not, get some more weed from him. He told me how much I owed him, so don't worry about it or whatever. I was gonna pay him. And I walked back up the street, and this guy just started like, "Oh yeah, he owed $500." I'm like, and these are like city workers, so I knew these people could not be part of a organization that was so well kept. There's no way possible. I'm not saying like black people or hood people or like people can't keep secrets and nothing, or, but for them to be part of this secret organized stalker organization, let me know that this is something that is beyond what meets the eye. But so I started dealing with the concept of beliefs of the Illuminati coming after me, wanting me to sell my soul, and all this stuff started to happening around me. And I'll never forget. I was at the library going through all this stuff. I'm nervous. I wasn't about to go back home without understanding what was happening to me. But this is all part of my journey, and I'll never forget where I was at the library talking to this individual, and I smoked this individual and all this stuff. And I remember around this time I was into this reptilian thing, this reptilian belief system. The whole reptilian, like reptilians around LA, and when I was into this reptilian belief system, I remember walking down the street, and there was this young white girl on the corner just sitting down. And I just happened to look at her tattoo, and she had a pyramid on her tattoo with like a slit. I took pictures. I still have all this evidence and pictures and stuff I've taken on my journey. It's like in 2015. But so back to the library. So I remember I'm talking to this guy. We're talking about a movie or something. I can't remember what movie we was talking about. But my keyboard and my phone had like logged, like had jammed up or would allow me to um press the keys or whatever. So I remember I told him to use my Google Voice or whatever, right? So he spoke into my phone, and I watched him. He spoke, but he like, oh, like that right there. Words didn't come out. Completely choked up. And I got my phone back. It said, "I remember the Marine." So prior to this um gang stalking started to happen, I met a couple individuals that I would hang out with, get high, and meet ex porn actors and all this type of stuff going on in LA and Hollywood and Studio City, and so much was going on in my life at this point in time. So to make a long story short, I told him about a brother I had or whatever that was a Marine. And I remember when I was going through my little gang stalking experience and all this stuff, I remember I told him that he was like a reptilian. Well, before it actually happened, like a month before it happened, I told him like a reptilian. But at that time, I never knew about how powerful God is, and like sending your message through anybody. And God has the power to send you an illusion where to get your attention, to really change your behavior, and all the while you think it's just this person actually doing it, but it's God overall creativity in and waking you up to who you are and your purpose in life. So, but he allowed tests, he allowed things to really come at you based on your limited belief system in which you have been molded to believe that this type of things actually happen. So, um, when the phone registered, I remembered the Marine. I knew at that time that was a ritual sacrifice offer, complete ritual, and I have only told one person in LA at that time. He was at that time, I think he's a Scottish Rite Freemason, and if I'm not mistaken, but I know he was associated with this one of the more prominent Catholic church is located in Pasadena. So, and next door to that church was a Freemason building. So when he told me he was Scottish, and I started going through my episode, I associated with him being a Freemason because he mentioned something about being Scottish. And also he mentioned something about the Book of Enoch. This is a random conversation before gang stalking started to happen. It was like I was getting those seeds planted in my mind and whatever, right? So after the individual told me about the whole the movie or whatever, and it showed up on my screen, I freaked out. So at that point in time, I left the library. I go down what's that, Fifth Street, which eventually turns to Wilshire. I walk down Fifth Street, Fifth and Hope, I think, or Fifth and Grand, and I'm freaking out, about to go home. A bus pull up right in front of me, and at this time, I know it's a ritual sacrifice. I knew exactly what it was, and a bus pull up in front of me, and it was like, "You're the best man money could buy." Freak me out, and it was like, at this time, I associated this type of power that was coming from the government, become from the individual I met, or but it was the devil. Literally, it was the devil, and in my perception, in my programming belief system, and the things that I've witnessed in my life, it was beyond what any organization could do. You know, I remember in one stage of my gang stalking in LA, in regards to how intensified my situation was very intensive, where it was beyond what I could imagine. That for me to sit here and tell my story right now lets me know that if I'm not blessed, I don't know what to explain or how to tell anyone. But there are signs and wonders along my story to let me know that there's something here beyond in which I can explain. But um, so from there, I remember one time I was so like going back between government, and I remember one day I got so fed up, I was like, Satan, if you're real, show me a fire. I want to see something. I want to see how real you is. You real, show me a fire, because it was like I was going back between the government and this and all this. Just can't be real. It was unbelievable. And and I remember like the next day or soon thereafter, this apartment complex that someone pointed, actually that Freemason guy pointed out to me, or that Catholic priest. He was saying he wanted to become a Catholic priest and all this stuff, but that's a whole long story. But at this time, I had no concept of belief or what Catholicism was, or I thought all churches would praise God. I didn't know the difference, none of that stuff, you know. But like I said, this has been like an episode or links in my whole life that things I can point out that lets me know that it's something beyond in which I could ever imagine that was taking place in my life. So he pointed out this apartment structure one day. We was on the freeway, Harbor Freeway, and there was this apartment structure in construction right near downtown. And he was like pointed at it, made a conversation about it, like, hey, they're building these apartment structures everywhere, right? And I was like, yeah. So tell me why, in the mix of me going through what I was going through, I was like, show me a fire, Satan, if you're real. Tell me why that apartment structure was burnt up, caught on fire. It's one of the largest fires in LA County to this day. It was called the Da Vinci Apartment Complex fire. And it freaked me out when later I went through and seen the name, the Da Vinci. And one part of my story, my journey, I was caught up on the Da Vinci Code and all this stuff, and what was really happening with the movies I've seen, the programming. And I mean, one part I was in the Matrix because of the stuff that happened to me, because an individual had gave me a blue pill, and I got caught up in the whole Matrix thing. I thought I was literally in the Matrix, because the same Freemason guy or whatever, quote unquote, whatever he was, gave me a blue pill, and that's when things started happening around me. After he gave me a blue pill, I woke up and I found out somebody had got murdered on a corner, and it freaked me out after I reflected back on what happened. But it was two guys walking down the street, and the guy pulled up in a Beamer and shot one of the dudes, and the other guy got away. But when I woke up, that really freaked me out as to me reflecting on how all these things were synchronized and aligned as part of my story and testimony and belief. Um, but so um, I can give you so many things that has happened in the last 2.5 years um, in my life in regards to figuring out what was happening to me. The whole number thing and dealing with the programming of people seeing these numbers, and there's a one lady called Mystery of Iniquity. She also has these like things she's posting online, but somehow as part of that mind control aspect of dealing with 1111, 444, 333, and all these things. And I've had some stuff happen in regards to numbers that was mind blowing. Um, but I'll also have things that show up in my pictures to let me know that I am not alone. I've had um, encounters with people, places, and things, or at moments of distress, and people will come out of nowhere and say something like, "It's going to be all right." You know, there's a thing in the Bible where it says, "Be careful who you entertain, because you can be entertaining angels unaware." So, I just wanted to give a little short little story because, like, my book is over 200,000 words, and I'm actually a couple months behind just based on things that has happened to me in the last 3 months. Um, I've done a lot of spiritual warfare. I pray every day. I pray hard, and the things in which I encounter, pretty much, I wish everyone the best of luck on their journey and understanding, and thank for all the little hidden messages that has came along, because like I said, God can work through anybody without them being aware, and the lessons in which I have encountered in my life has helped me tremendously a lot. Um, I have I look at life a lot different, but at the same time, I go back to that part of my mind where it's like, what happened to me? Why did I live the life that I live, and selling the drugs and all this stuff? But at the end of the day, through the turmoil, through the pain, through the suffering, it has made me see life completely different and made me a better person. Um, I have stories in regards, before all this stuff to happen. Like, I'm just giving you like a little up and down parts of my life in regards to prior to the gang stalking and prior to things that was happening. I remember when I moved to LA. Oh, I remember actually when the gang stalking started. Um, I kind of like thought it was behind a book I had wrote. It was about one guy living from the beginning of time to the end of time, and he was always around at every major event that happened in his life. In reality, we know he was around through Adam and Eve. Well, he was Adam, and he was Noah. He was all these people that meant something to mankind. He was a slave on a slave ship. He incarnated himself as different individuals to experience life throughout his life. But that was like, I wrote that book just on it, just purely one day. Like, I was going through something. I was incarcerated, and I was going to church every day at this time. While I was incarcerated, they had church every single day, and I would go. And this is the best church I have yet to encounter in my life. But I do not want to be incarcerated to go to that church. I'm being honest with you, God. But this was the best experience I've had in the church. I would go every single day. And I think God, well, I know God separated me for a reason in regards to me getting incarcerated to go to this church every single day, because it's based on my life story and things I've seen, experienced, and done. There's no way I should be free. I should have 25 life, or been in prison for the rest of my life. But I'm not here to touch on that aspect of my life, because God knows my heart. Everyone says that, but my intentions in my life has been good, but I got led astray. But hopefully I can find my way back home. So um, with that being said, I was touching up on the aspect of this individual who, he incarnated different individuals throughout the course of his life. But He's around for every major event in life, including the end time. And that's another thing I forgot to touch on. And since I was a child, I always felt like that the world was coming to an end. That's been my biggest fear. Like I felt like this world, I was going to see the world come to the end. But I don't know if that was part of that fear or if I was going through spiritual warfare back then. But I know just based on things I would do as a kid that there was something going on in my life. And I remember one of the most traumatic experiences I had. I remember when my sister told me, like, all bad boys go to hell every Sunday. I was like 4 or 5 years old. Freaked me out. I was so scared, right? And I remember, like, when Sunday come, I would literally freak out. I would be so scared. I had fear of God back then, but it was more so of the fear of me, like, thinking I'm bad or something. I don't know why I thought that because, like, um, but I also later in life attributed that to part of some type of trauma programming of my mind back then by my sister, who was job was to probably warn me or to put fear in me to traumatize me and part of some MK Ultra mind control. But I kind of like throw theory out because of, but I just hold on to it in the aspect of just because I've read about that type of traumatic, so trauma is the gateway. But our at a young age, I had a treehouse, right? I had a treehouse, and well, I wouldn't call it. It was a treehouse in the process of being built. I had like some planks and chains hanging down from this tree. I did it myself, actually. I'm like 12 years old. I was raised, and I had access to every tool you can use: welding machines and torches and hammers and cranes and motors, and I had access to all this stuff growing up as a child, pretty much. So, um, I would go out and get wood, building the tree and all this stuff. And my father I was really close. And it's like, I remember one day, like, I was outside in the treehouse playing. He was building some steps to the house or whatever. And he told me to come help him, right? And I remember I was in the treehouse doing something or whatever. I didn't want to get down. And he was like, come here, help me. And I was like, no, I'm busy. He got mad and got upset for the first time. I've never seen my father get upset at me. Never, ever. So I got down off the tree start. I think I said some foul words back, and well, I know I said something that was demeaning or whatever. I took off running, and I went home. I freaked out because I was like, man, I just got into it with my pops. Never got into an argument with him before. Now I can't remember, and he's been together, been around me, and so the next day, which was I would say April, or a day after, I would say the next day on April 13th. I remember it would have to be the next day. He drove by, and I was on the playground at my mom's house, and I was on a swing, just swinging all this stuff, and he drove by this red Delta 88, and he was driving slow. I took off running, tried to catch him, like, hey, look, look. He never looked back, never looked back, and the same night I was waking up. I got woken up by my mom like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and she told me my father had passed away. That event within itself traumatized me more so than I could ever imagine. I didn't understand life. I didn't understand death. I didn't know how I could live or make it with my father um passing on. I could not understand. I was outside crying. That really hurted me. That was trauma. I couldn't imagine life no more. It was like, psst, what goes on? What's going on? Like, God, I mean, I was outside praying, 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 praying. Like, God, what's going on? Like, I'm like 12 years old. I didn't have no understanding about life and all this stuff. But I remember I looked up in the sky, and there was a star. And this star, like, blinked at me. I knew this was a mess. And around it, and this is what happened. My neighbor came outside. His name Rudolph. And he's like said some encouraging words to me, and I knew there was a God then, and he was real. That star, it was like a direct message to me, like it's gonna be all right. I felt that and I seen that, but from 12 to 18, there were so many things that was happening in my life that was growing me and building. Of course, I rebel at a certain age because of certain things that was going on in my household. Um, but I started smoking weed, I started selling drugs, and I had everything I want pretty much, but except love from my mother or whatever, because that's what I felt like I wanted. But God had other plans for me in my life, for my struggle, my story, my testimony. So I will not let my suffering and even the pain and stuff I went through go in vain. But I just wanted to touch on that aspect of my life, and there's so many things I can go on into regards to things that have happened to me, the paranormal. At one point, um, where I stayed in the Hotel Cecil in Los Angeles, and that is a very quote unquote, people say it's kind of haunted or whatever, but that's where something major happened in my life. Um, but that's just a little short, very short synopsis of who I am and what I've been through and what I represent. I don't know where to start, like on the story of the journey of my life. Um, I left home at 18 years old, moved to LA. I went through some things in LA in which, like, I didn't know what I was doing or why I was doing it, why I was homeless on the street. I had a cousin out there. She wouldn't let me stay with her. I remember I actually was sticking her a little apartment complex. She's in Koreatown. Very nice area. Like, I would say, like gated parking, underground parking, and pool, and all this type of gym.